Someday Maybe wasn't always called Someday Maybe. Yeah, and I know there can be a mind block to be like, no, I have to keep making this better and better and better. But I tell aspiring writers all the time, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to exist. So just write it and put it out there. People, do you know what? I expected a lot more people to have stronger feelings about Ophelia, but you know, the feedback I've got, most people are more angry with Inkem than they are with Ophelia. And I fully understand that. Watch out there. This is the thing. Like, people, yes, we do complain a lot about our stories are so traumatic, but there's so many books by Black and African authors that aren't that as well. All right. So chapter 2. Consider this: a rainstorm. A gently perspiring woman perched on the edge of a metal hospital bed.
Lovely, and hello everyone. Lovely to have you all here. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time to join us on this October edition of the BASK Book Club. My name is Toby, as Nikki said, and I've been doing this since November 2022. And I can see some new faces. Thank you for joining. And I'm super excited about the opportunity to share a lot about my excitements around African literature, especially books written by authors of African descent. And before we get started, I always love to share a bit about what really inspired the whole idea behind this book club. So I moved into the UK in 2020 to start up my MBA program at the University of Surrey. And before then, I had like a past life, a bookseller back in my home country. I have one of the biggest bookstores back at home, and I always had a thing for African literature. So on one of those occasions on the high street, I decided to walk into the library to request for a popular book written by a Zimbabwean author from the library. And fortunately, it wasn't available, and they needed to do a bit of transfer from Bristol or something. I felt like the book was, getting a lot of media attention, and it just was a no-brainer that it should be available at the library. And I realized that there's actually a huge gap that needed to be filled in terms of providing more visibility and awareness around fantastic stories that come from Africa, the continent that I'm super duper proud of to come from. And so fast forward to a few weeks, sending in a few proposals to the amazing people at the Guildford Library and the Surrey County that were willing to support this initiative. So huge thank you to Nikki and the work of the team at Guildford that have been supporting us with this book club over the years. And today, I'm excited to have Onyi. And Onyi is someone that I really hold in high regard, not to make you feel uncomfortable, right? But I love what Onyi does with words, with language. And I first read a debut, Something Maybe. Has anyone here read it? Okay, great. But this was her debut. I think it was out sometime last year, and I felt that she's such a refreshing voice, as well as very audacious too as well. She chooses to address themes and subject matters that most people tend to shy away from or refer to as sensitive, if that makes sense. And so after reading Something Maybe, I knew that any other thing Onyi writes, I will definitely want to read. And so as soon as this new book titled Allow Me to Introduce Myself came out, I think it was in July, August.
Yeah, I think it was end of May for UK and then early June for the US. Yeah.
Fab. So I knew I wanted to get a copy of this and go through it. And so a huge thank you to you and you for making time to join us today. And I can't wait to delve into a few questions that I've got here. So this is how this works. Just the moderator. Feel free to chime in to stop me to make this as interactive, as engaging as possible. We're all here to pick on his brain, ask her very interesting questions that will keep her on her toes. That's okay. Right? And before we delve into the questions, she's also going to get a chance to read an excerpt from the book. Feel free to let her know which particular page you would love her to read from. And at the end of the session, we've got copies available and a POS if you want to grab one and have a sign it for you. Buy for your friends. Feel free to help promote, the amazing work that African authors are doing in this part of the world. So I'll kick off by reading Onyi's bio from the back of the book before we delve into the questions. Onyi Nwabineli I hope I got the pronunciation right.
Yes,
Is okay. Is a Nigerian British writer born in Benin, Nigeria. She grew up in Glasgow, the Isle of Man, and Newcastle, and now lives in London. Onye is the co-founder of Surviving Out Loud, a fund that provides financial support for survivors of sexual assault, and the founder of Black Pens, a writing retreat for Black women. Her debut novel, Someday Maybe, was a Good Morning America Book Club pick and was shortlisted for the Diverse Book Awards. And Onye, it's so lovely to have you here again.
it's my
Thank you so
absolute
much
pleasure.
for joining.
It's
And I'll be kicking off with my first question, which is mostly around what your book tends to address, your books in general. I've written here that I've tried to make up so many scenarios in my head of what made you write about social media, about internet, about this particular subject matter. And in your acknowledgement, I got it is of the iceberg in terms of what your answer would likely look like, but just guessing. You talked about how the experiences of children immortalized on internet sprout you to action. So it would be lovely to hear you tell us a bit about what that means to you and why this particular theme.
So thank you very much, and it's great to see you guys. Thank you for giving up your Saturdays to be here, part of your Saturday. So yeah, so back in the early 2000s, I don't know if anybody else was on the internet and you were witness to the mommy blogger boom, where you had this sudden burst of women, primarily in America, who suddenly became very, very famous and very, very rich because they started posting about their lives as mothers. And at the time, I was very into that content. I don't know why, but something drew me to it.
Well, you
it was very,
no?
I'm not a mother. I'm not. No, I'm not a mother. But it was very. I think it was part of it was escapism for me.
Okay.
I was here in London. You know, it was just miles. It was worlds apart from what I was used to, and it was very interesting. I thought it was refreshing as well because these mothers were bold and they were honest for the most part, talking a lot about postpartum depression. There was one lady in particular, Heather Armstrong, who sadly has died. But she was the queen of the mummy bloggers back in the day, and she became rich very quickly. She talked about her mental health. She talked about her marriage, the struggles. She talked about the struggles of motherhood. And it was so interesting to me. So I started consuming this content. And along with motherhood, obviously children are involved. And these ladies, they started posting their children and telling stories about their children online. I felt like I was watching these children grow up. And, you know, as times went on and social media diversified, then it became YouTube. And that was a huge boom as well. There was so much family content on YouTube, and there still is. And I started consuming some of that content. I was like, this is so cute. These babies are so adorable. But then after a while, after a couple of years, I started thinking, this is odd. I don't know how I would feel if I was one of these children and when I'm older, log on to YouTube or log on to wherever, Squarespace or Blogger or whatever it was at the time, and I see images, videos of myself and comments about myself. None of these people have met me. I don't know who these children are, yet I know what their lives are about, or at least a big part of their lives. And as time went on, children, I have 3 godchildren and I have a niece and nephew who are very, very young. And as time went on, I just kept thinking, this is so strange. And, you know, with social media and with the internet, anything can be monetized and anything can be made into content these days. And it just, at the time, there was no research about what the actual fallout of this was, what the effects, psychological effects on these children were. There still isn't that much out there. However, what I'm seeing these days, when I first started researching for this book, there wasn't anything out there. These days, as time has gone on, there's become a lot more. These children are growing up and they are speaking out about, I don't want this. I don't want this. I still don't want this. My parents ignored my wishes. They've this and that. There's a lot more coming out now. And it's kind of a hill that I'm willing to die on a little bit. I believe in the autonomy of children. I believe in consent across the board. And so that's why I chose to write the book.
Amazing. It's quite a noble cause to champion, if I just say so. And I just wanted to take you very quickly back to a point you made around how there's such power in content, right? I want to play the devil's advocate and maybe make an excuse for parents to decide to go this route. So a lot of them would share ideas. I mean, there are quite a number of them that are making a huge career out of this now. There are kids that, I mean, those kids show up on Instagram and TikTok and they sound like they're really happy and they're willing to like do this. And some of them even go on to build a career out of this in future. I see when you look at the trajectory of Zendaya and quite a number of famous actors that we know in this age and time, many of them start off as a child actor, maybe. And so most parents feel that they're setting the child off on a good path to stardom, to maybe building a career in the Hollywood or entertainment industry for whatever showbiz business and all of that. And so for some of them, you might get some pushback or
I've had lots of pushback.
negative feedback from them. So how do you deal with that? And how do you kind of like make a stronger case for defense or for the argument, not necessarily an argument, right, but the theme that your book sort of like explores?
So where I try and come from is that I'd like to believe that most parents are never going to do something intentionally to harm their child.
Yeah.
So all of this most of it comes from a good place, right?
Yeah.
You know, you want to set your child up for the future. At the same time, obviously, you want to look after your own family and so on and so forth. However, and this is where I draw the distinction. My views have become stronger since I started researching this book.
Okay.
Now, even though there are protections in place for child actors and so on, there are no protections in place for child media stars in that sense. Some are being floated now. I think one has just been passed in California where parents now have to pay their children for this content. And the backlash that I've seen for that simple thing, you know, these are the children are making you rich and now you're upset because you now have to set aside a portion of the profits to actually pay the people. A lot of the parents are like, well, we'll move out of California so we don't have to adhere to this new legislation. So there's a distinction with child actors. I believe there are protections there. There could be better. And after watching certain things like, you know, I forgot the name of the documentary, but there's lots of documentaries coming out now about child actors and how they are exploited as well. I'm just very much on the side of the child. I don't believe that parents go out of their way to harm their children, but at the same time, there's enough information out there now to understand that you are still inadvertently putting your child in harm's way potentially. So I'm very much like, just keep your kids off the internet until they can consent, until they understand what that means. A 2-year-old will be having the best time of their life in front of a camera, in front of an iPhone. When they're 18, they're going to say, well, of course I was smiling and laughing. I was 2 and you gave me toys, but like I didn't understand the ramifications of having my image out there. And so that's why I'm very kind of steadfast on this. Yes, because of the children in my life, but also because we're hearing now from these children that have grown. Just the downside of it. And it's not something, I mean, I'm in my 30s. I'm like, I don't want you to take my photo unless I've given consent. So why don't children get that same, that same privilege?
Good. Food for thought. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I'll move into my next question, which is about the emotions that your books tend to explore or elicit. This might sound very bizarre, but Onyi in something maybe explores grief in its rawest form. Not sure if you should definitely check this out.
It's a tearjerker. I apologize in advance. But it's funny.
But it's actually
it's funny as well. It's funny as well.
It is so good. And in allow me to introduce myself, you kind of talked a lot about the psychological effect, addressed a few mental health issues as well. I loved how you built a huge plot around the therapist. I mean, it's very unusual to really know what goes on or what actually takes a therapist to, attend to the needs of his or her clients and all of that. And these issues are very sensitive, like I rightly mentioned earlier. And why? I mean, and the way you kind of tend to like write about them is so profound. It's so unique, and it makes you feel all type of ways and gets you into the mind of the character itself. And it got me thinking that it takes maybe a personal experience perhaps to be able to do justice to some of these topics, right? So how do you manage to pull it off?
So with Someday Maybe, just for those that haven't read it, it centers around Eve, who has tragically lost her husband to suicide, and she's navigating the aftermath of that, especially because he did not leave a note. So and I have not experienced that personally. However, I wrote Someday Maybe as a gift for a friend who did experience a very similar situation. She did lose her husband by suicide. He did leave a note, and she asked me to write the book, and I said no many times, because I said I've never experienced this. I've experienced grief. Everyone's experienced grief, loss. We've lost someone, but I don't feel like I can convey adequately what it is that you're feeling. I kind of moved in with her for a month after she lost her husband, and so I was witness to the rawest part of her grief. It was really painful, and it was heartbreaking to witness. And I just kept asking her, what do you need? How can I help? She said, you need to write about this, because nobody understands how I'm feeling. Everybody, and she was very right. Like, unfortunately, the society that we live in today is set up so that we don't have the room and the time to adequately grieve and mourn the things that we have lost. You can lose someone so close to your grandma, someone, you'll go to work and explain the situation. They'll be like, yes, of course, please. And then, but 2-3 days later, they'll be expecting you back at your desk. Meanwhile, the emotions inside you are still raw. I wanted to explore what it means to not even be given, but to take the space and the time to grieve adequately, and gift this to my friend. It wasn't a novel, what I wrote in the end. It was very short, like 20 pages. It was just like a series of kind of a stream of consciousness. And she loved it so much that she said, please, you need to share this in some way with the world. And again, I said, no, this is for you. But she pushed me. So I came up with the plot. The plot is very fictional, please. It's not about her. It's very, very fictional. And she was the first person that read it. And if she did not like it would never have seen the light of day. So that's where, and people now call me, they're like, you write grief so well. And there's grief in this book. And I'm like, I take that as a compliment. But at the same time, it's because I want people to understand that it is okay to take a long time to recover from something. With grief, everyone says it's not linear, and we know that. However, people still expect you to be better on their timeline, and Eve is somebody that refuses that. And Anne-Marie, who is the main character, and allow me to introduce myself, she also takes her time to make it through what she's experienced as well. And I believe in giving characters space and room to do that, even though they're very messy and they get things wrong a lot of the times. We're all human, and I want my characters to be human. So
what would you say to a counter argument, or someone who reads Something Maybe, or reads about Anne-Marie and Allow Me to Introduce Myself, and says to you, like, you're taking too much time to grieve, for example, like there's never enough time to grieve in the real sense of the word. You cry from perhaps now till the end of time, it won't bring the person back, right? So why bother? Why, like,
I mean, why not? Like, there's no who's to say what the adequate time is to mourn somebody. There's no one size fits all when it comes to anything to do with grief or pain or anything. And somebody might be fine after 2 weeks. Somebody might take 2 years. Somebody might never fully recover. And who's to say, what's the right way and what's the right period of time in order to, recover from an absolutely shattered heart and experience, right? So those are the things that I think about when I write, because I'm like, if I did not have to be at work at 9 a.m. on Monday morning and I just lost my husband, what would I be doing? And I too would be on the floor. I wouldn't get up. I wouldn't. And what has touched me so much is people reaching out after reading Someday Maybe, or after reading Allow Me to Introduce Myself, and said, you know what, I don't know how you managed to get into my head, but it's with Someday Maybe, it was mostly the widowed ladies and gentlemen that reached out and said, I don't know how you managed to capture everything I felt in that book without having lost a spouse. And I was like, that's all I wanted. If it touched one person, that's all, and resonated with one person, that's all I want for my writing. So Yeah, I love it when people play devil's advocate, because I'm like, okay, well, why do you think that? And that's why people shout at me for someday maybe. They're like, what do you mean he didn't leave a note? And I'm like, well, what would a note have solved? It's things like that I put back to the reader. I love hearing people's perspectives.
Yeah. Thank you for entertaining all of the counter or opposite perspective to some of the thoughts you put forward in your books. Right. Has anyone here read? Allow me to introduce myself, and I don't want to be the only one doing the talking.
Yes,
so
come on,
feel
shout
free
at
to,
me.
like,
Ask
chime in now. Still got
questions.
loads of questions here, anyways, but love to hear your thoughts as well. What did you think about the character? Do you think it's actually realistic, some of the things she went through, or she was probably overdoing it?
And she never gave in, did she? Just fought and fought and fought and
Yeah.
back down.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's stronger than me.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because I wouldn't. No, I would. I wouldn't. Literally, I wouldn't.
No, I don't think I would have done that. You know, I did think, God, it was so draining.
Yeah. If you made it to the last page of this book, did you find the resolution or the ending satisfactory? Did anyone manage to? Yeah.
That's interesting. Most people don't.
They
not, and because they want. I think, for a lot of readers, they want a very neat, tidy, happy ending, and I don't do that.
Come on! I was expecting. Okay, no spoilers, but Henry and Kristen, like.
Those are my babes, but like, I'm talking about the wider picture.
Yeah, and then Ophelia gets to.
Yeah, a lot of people. Do you know what? I expected a lot more people to have stronger feelings about Ophelia, but the feedback I've got, most people are they're more angry with Inkem than they are with Ophelia, and I fully understand that. I do as well.
Yeah.
Good. Where she kind of pushes it back to him, and I can't remember what it is. So he asks her not to do something,
and
she says, well, she's my daughter. And I think there's like such pivotal moments where he could have made the right choice, and it's just like so disappointing, like seeing those decisions made.
Yeah, absolutely.
But realistic.
But really, absolutely, and that's when I had an event in Brixton Library, and my friend Jade, she asked some questions around why I chose to write Inkem the way I did, and I was like, because it's reflective of reality. A lot of, unfortunately, especially in our African culture, a lot of men are hands off when it comes to child rearing. They're very much like, well, that's what the wife is there for. I don't know how to. Yes, I made the decision to come to England and raise her myself, but now that I have a wife, I will just leave all of that to her. And he is the ultimate avoidant person, and that's avoidant people that have strong feelings about them. So
Okay, I'm glad we're talking about Inkem. I wanted us to like explore his character for a minute, and I feel like it's weird that you I was talking to myself about how I feel it's weird that I'm choosing to talk about Nkem as a character before Henry, who is like the protagonist, right? I think the society expects so much from men and do not extend the measure of grace to them, especially when they're dealing with experiences that has to do with their heart, right? How else can we kind of like lessen the pressure on them, or even encourage them to embrace vulnerability, for example? Because I imagine that for someone like Nkem, it would have made a world of difference if he got the opportunity to be a bit more vulnerable, to maybe open up about all of the wild stuff happening up in his head, having lost the love of his life.
Yeah, I can only speak for Inkem, but he had that opportunity. He was given it. He was offered help. He was offered space by Kainena's parents. His sister was there. He chose to take his child and go where he had basically one person who had their own life. He made that decision, and most men don't get that. Exactly. So, most of us don't have, and it's something that I really mourn for our society in general. Most of us don't have a village, as in we don't have enough support, a support system that will offer you, the space and time and help you with the physical and mental and emotional load of raising a child, and just having people around you that will will support you while you're grieving. Most people do not have that, especially if you've moved from one place to another. So the fact that Income had that and he chose to remove himself from that situation, I mean, my sympathy is capped. Like it is, but in a wider sense, for men and with everyone of today, yeah, right. The society we live in and the conditions in which we are meant to thrive under are just very, very, very difficult. And if you don't have a support system, if you don't make an effort to build that support system, nobody's coming to save you. The government's not going to do it for you. You have to do that yourself. And unfortunately, people are, for whatever reason, myriad reasons, they're tired. They've just broken down and exhausted. They don't want to talk to anyone after 10 hours in the office. They don't feel like they will be supported. Everyone's fickle. Like they'll swipe right on somebody and discard the next person. Everyone, it's just a melting pot of different situations. But a lot of it is underpinned by, especially again in our culture, is underpinned by patriarchy. Men are supposed to be strong. They're just supposed to be the providers. They're not supposed to break down. So even Income, when he's given an opportunity to do that, he's like, no, I need to solve this by myself, and I'm going to do that by myself. So
interesting. If I'm not wrong, I guess the point you're trying to say or make is that vulnerability in itself is actually a choice, right?
It is. It's difficult, and I won't say it's not difficult to break free of socialization, the way that you've been raised, and the way that the society as a whole impacts on you. But it's still a choice at the end of the day. And you can make it. And you might not find kinship with the same people that you've known all your life, but there's other people in the world. So
because I mean, he chose Ophelia in place of the village and his kinsmen that were willing to, offer a shoulder or succor to him and all. So thank you for exploring that. Does anyone want to talk a bit more about Income, for example, and maybe, share any thoughts? I
have a question for people, if I'm allowed to.
Yeah, sure.
For those of you that have read it, who's your favorite character? Oh, I always ask this. I love it. Let me see if it's my favorite character.
I was just going to mention Sydney as well.
She's great. I love her. She's great.
Yeah. Who inspired Simi?
My best friend, Precious.
Yes. Yeah. Precious, by the way, took Onyi's what's the name? Portrait. We had showed here, and she did such a fantastic job with it, by the way. And now that we're talking about Simi and friendship, I'd love us to delve into that very quickly. I'm like, your book is like a celebration of the beauty of friendship. I've written here that friendship is such an anchor that can hold one through the most turbulent storms in life. And that's what thing you've managed to explore in this book. How did Hanuri get so lucky? And then does friendship just happen, or they're just meaningful connection that you have to be intentional about forging?
Friendship can just happen, but for it to be sustained, you have to make an effort. And this is what I mean about a village, right? So everybody wants somebody or people that they can fall and lean on, right? But you also need to be able to extend that same grace and that same effort to others when they need it as well. And I think a lot of us struggle with that sometimes, especially in today where it's like our WhatsApp notifications are going 20 to the dozen. You're just like, well, if you're me, you're just like, please, I just need
I need a break.
I just need 5 minutes. But you have to put yourself out there in order to build connection. It's not just something that you'll be fortunate to stumble across it. But if you don't nurture it, if you don't water people's flowers, and they won't grow and they won't last. So and I believe, and it's something that I will probably, a theme that I will continue through everything I write, is that there are so many different kinds of love, and people just concentrate primarily on romantic love. They put it above everything else. Your partner is this and that, and that's wonderful. I'm not single either, but like when I know that looking in the future, I don't just see the person I'm with romantically. I see my entire village. I see my best friends. I see my family. I see all of them, and I'm like, they are my life partners as well. It's not just the person that I'm attracted to. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot more people these days are discovering that and are feeding into that. But But I still think we have a ways to go, because I do think that people unintentionally, again, because of the way that we've been raised and socialization, isolate themselves from, or, detach themselves from what could be a magnificent and wonderful, long lasting connections just because they're not romantic. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for sharing about that. Just wanted to touch a bit more around friendship, especially when, as regards, forging meaningful connections with people. I feel it's kind of harder to build friendship as an adult. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, but as children, I think the sheer naivety and the innocence of childhood just makes it easier for you to like coach through, and you just, before you know it, there's someone you look forward to meeting at the playground. But as an adult, when life pressure comes along, you're trying to get by. There's a 9 to 5, and then here's one human that you, not even for the romantic and what's the name benefits that comes along with it, but here's just one person that you want to intentionally, communicate with, fit them in about what's happening with your life and all of that. What useful tips? I don't know. I don't know. But what useful tips, or what do you find in your experience with adult friendship to have helped in nurturing or making it a bit more seamless? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same principle that I apply to romantic relationships as well. Is not trying to make one person everything to you.
Yeah.
Like, I have my best friends, but I don't go to them for necessarily every single thing, because there's certain things that I know they don't know about, or they don't feel confident enough to give me advice on. I have other friends for that, or I can go to my mother or my sister or whoever. And so that's a tip. When you meet somebody that you feel like you have a connection with, you can go into it thinking, well, I don't have to make this person like the central part of my life, everything.
It's a lot of pressure, actually.
It's a lot of pressure to put on somebody that you don't know. So that's one. And the other thing, it's not easy. Like, I will not say it's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But you have, like you said, you have to be intentional. You have to pick up the phone and call people. You have to text people. You have to invite them over. You have to invite them out. And me, I'm introverted, so I'm usually in my house. And thankfully, my friends love me enough to come to my house. But I have to invite them and make them feel welcome and at home there.
Yeah.
My best friends have keys to my house. So if I try and go missing or ghost for whatever, they'll show up there, because that's the relationship that we have.
Yeah.
You have to, even sometimes if you're too tired and there's too much going on, you still have to make that effort. You have to sacrifice, and nobody wants to do that these days. So but also, there's another tip is, unfortunately, you're gonna have to put yourselves in situations that may be slightly outside of your comfort zone. You're gonna have to talk to strangers. You're going to have to talk to your colleagues. Like, you are. Otherwise, what else is there?
No show, right? Yeah. Okay. So it's still about friendship. If you had to choose a favorite between Simi and Loki, would it be?
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
But Simi.
Okay. I saw that coming though.
I love. Don't get me wrong. I love Loki. I love Loki.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved writing him, but Simi, she's just that perfect
girl.
Yeah, she's a girl's girl, through and through.
Amazing. Yeah. So we're gonna ask you to read the next step.
I can't even find the one that I want to choose.
I'll allow you to choose this time.
This time?
Yeah.
Is there one that you would like me to read? Because I don't mind. Oh, yes, I found it.
Okay.
It's chapter 2, the beginning of chapter 2.
Okay. I think that...
not even yes.
Okay. I think that should be page 27 if you want to read along. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I right?
Yes.
Great.
All right. So chapter 2. Consider this: a rainstorm. A gently perspiring woman perched on the edge of a metal hospital bed. The sheets are a bright green plaid, but they remind her of the fields behind her parents' compound in Akwa, and she holds onto this like a crutch and leans willingly into the pain. This pain, she knows, is a gift. One she has prayed for through months, then years of blood and tears and hopelessness that have been scrubbed from the bathroom floor by Inkem after the fact. tiny outfits bought for the would-be owners who never got the chance to wear them. It is why she has not allowed herself to cry out, has swallowed each shout like tonic. Each scream would feel like betrayal to herself, to God, and to this child who has brought her to this same hospital 16 times over the past 8 months for checkups and false alarms brought about by overzealous and slightly traumatized parents-to-be, who has pinned her to her bed, rearranged not only her organs but the very fiber of her being, the beating of her heart, who is the single most wonderful thing that has ever happened to her. Throughout it all, she has rejoiced. She had, in those first weeks, been so gripped by fear that she would creep from the bedroom and pound yam in the kitchen until her arm seized. And when Inkem found her asleep on the kitchen floor, he would carry her back to bed and fold her fingers into his palm, hoping to absorb some of the desperate hope that radiated from her. Their prayers were whispered at first. She asked God to have mercy, he for strength. The woman's name is Kainene, which is Igbo for let us watch, a portent. Inkem first saw her as he held court over a platter of rice and assorted meat at Mama Neji's. He was 19, young and handsome, and life had not yet stolen from him the cocky assuredness that he carried in his pockets and doled out in the form of smiles, jokes, and overly loud greetings to strangers who could not help but smile back. He and his friends frequently congregated at Mama Neji's because her food was second only to their own mothers cooked and served under roofs beneath which they no longer lived. Mama Neji herself liked Inkem's smile, one that broke open his entire face, and she appreciated how he would double back to help her lug sacks of onions or tubers of yam. So she would knock off a few naira and let him feel like something of a man among this gaggle of boys. That day, Kainene, surly and recalcitrant, had been sent to collect and transport a tray of peppered snails to her mother's friend, whose husband had found comfort between the thighs of another. Kainene's afternoon, previously set aside for friends and films, had now been sacrificed in service of someone else. Her own smile, which was near perpetual, had been chased from her face. Still, Inkem would tell her months later, when they lay pressed against each other, that he sensed her before he saw her, that the perspiration on her upper lip made him want to bolt over and kiss it away. The air was scented with oil and Scotch bonnet, but the real reason his eyes watered was because he had lost the ability to blink, to look away, to breathe. Here they were, 7 years and a lifetime later, sitting in Holy Rosary Specialist Hospital and Maternity Waterside, Onisha, waiting for their firstborn. It had been 7 years of fasting and prayer, of experts and authorities who nodded and clucked their sympathy and told the couple to try again. Almost a decade of Kainene's mother appearing in the house to stock the fridge and lie across her daughter, hoping to draw the grief into her own body until the smile returned. Of Kainene's father patting Inkem on the shoulder and allowing him to shed his tears away from the eyes of his wife. Inkem would always be grateful for this, the moments he could finally fall to pieces and reassemble himself into a husband who could give his wife what she so desperately wanted. His sister, Norma, was already living in London. She heard the news after everyone else. Inkem would grip the telephone so tightly that he lost feeling in his fingers. The baby, he had said a total of 3 inexplicable, excruciating times after each separate loss. Otuforunwa is gone. This time, the 4th, Inkem's worry had chewed through a portion of his stomach, and sometimes he coughed blood into the sink in the bathroom. Every day, he practiced disguising his dread with optimism, and as the months wore on, it became easier. Kainene's pregnancy shunted her from bed to doctor to hospital and back to bed, but Inkem learned to swallow his concern. The light had returned to his wife's eyes. Her smile tied a knot in his anxiety. Her laughter swept through the house and blew the foreboding out of the windows and over the red earth. He knew that love and fear sometimes tasted the same, and he loved Kainene enough to consume the fear and spit out joy. For her sake, he would pull the moon from the sky. In Holy Rosary, he dabbed at his wife's forehead with the sleeve of his shirt and looked around for the midwife who had led them to this metal bed. "I beg, where is this girl?" Inkem hissed, and Kainene took his hand and kissed the palm. "Try to..." Her sentence was sliced in half by contraction. Relax, Dim, my husband. You've been having headache for the past 2 days, and now your chest, Inkem's voice began to rise. Can you stay? I need to fetch her. Consider this. A brief but searing labor, the rain carving the sky open and descending in sheets, a baby girl born to parents who cradled her and wept with gratitude even as an air bubble formed deep inside a vein on the lower side of Kainene's abdomen and traveled swiftly towards her heart. The doctors caught it before it was too late, and 6 hours after the child was born, Kainene was returned to her bed. Nkem wanted a name wreathed in all the grandness of the Igbo tradition, but Kainene, who had battled and sweat and mourned her way through the loss of 3 pregnancies, reflected her simple and potent thanks in the girl's first name, Anwari, happiness, or joy, or simply rejoice. Tragedy, as it liked to do, waited until its impact would be most keenly felt, when there was more than one life to ruin. Mm-hmm. That night, the first and only, the 3 slept, but only 2 woke. The doctors caught the embolism, but missed the aneurysm, which erupted beautifully inside Kainene's brain as she dreamed about her new daughter.
What?
Sorry, Will.
I had to actually I listened to it.
Yeah.
I had to rewind that bit and go, what just happened?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was just like, I was just like, I wasn't fully concentrated.
Yeah, it was,
It was quite brutal. So
it was brutal. But when I did the first draft and sent to my editors, and I have fantastic editors in the UK and the US, they did say, the fact that Kainene is not there and is still such a big part of the story needs to be addressed fairly early on in the book. And I was like, okay. Because it was later that I started talking about her, and I had to bring that forward and make it quite stark, so people knew exactly why Nkem was behaving the way he was behaving. So yeah.
Outstanding, really. And as much as you explored the incident that led to Kainene's death in that excerpt, I think what actually stands out for me is how you manage to use language, use words to paint such vivid image in every single person's mind that gets to read that. I mean, the whole room was literally quiet, and I was transported back to potentially what might have happened in Oka or Nichara, which is where this particular excerpt was set in. And it leads me to my next question, which is mostly around how I think your writing is so lyrical. You write prose like it's poetry. Yeah, and reading your book is a treat. I felt like your book needs to be savored, like you need to let it simmer and sit in. I found myself going over certain sentences, and I had my notes filled with a lot of, lines of some very profound ways you talked about things about love, about death, and on and on. And I'm like, oh, if I really want to come off as super intelligent in conversations, I'll just chip in a few of those. Anyways. How did you attain this level of mastery when it comes to writing? Yeah, that's my question.
You're very, very kind. I don't know what to say. I've been writing since I was able to lift a pen. So it's something that I think has always been in me. And you know what our Nigerian parents are like. It's usually doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant. But from a very young age, my parents have been very much like, you like to write, so write. And and they've encouraged me. And I write what I think I would like to read. I think that's how I approach it. And I adore books. I read many, many books. And I was very worried when I embarked on this career that I was going to sound like someone else. And
who is that someone else? We don't mind me.
I don't know anyone. Like
Achebe.
I don't know. Like I was worried that someone somewhere would be like, oh, well, this is very reminiscent of, or her style is exactly the same. And I worried about that for a long time. And in the end, I just had to swallow that down and be like, even if you do, your writing does call someone else's to someone's mind, that's a compliment. There's nothing new under the sun, right? But I can only just be me. So my stories will be Onyi stories. They will always have an element of Igbo culture in them because that's who I am. They will always, center around themes that are important to me, love, loss, social media, things like that. So all you can do is try. And if if you inadvertently plagiarize, which is happening a lot more these days with the invent of AI, which I have strong feelings about.
Let's hope your next book isn't about AI.
Really but yeah, you can just try do as much as you can and be truthful to yourself and read. The more you read, the better writer you become. That's inescapable. I know people don't like to hear that, but the more you read, the better you become.
Do you ever get writer's block?
All the time. All the time. I have it right now. So yeah, and people ask me all the time, how do you manage it? I let myself be blocked for a while, because if I try to force through, I know that what I will produce will be absolute garbage, and I'll know that it's garbage. So I let myself be blocked for a while, and then I do things that usually draw me out of it. Long walks, K-dramas, reading. So exactly, those things, anything creative kind of gets. And then my biggest tip, all my friends always shouting at me because like, you're never in the UK. I'm like, yeah, I'm the most creative when I'm not here. I'm by the sea somewhere.
Travel a lot.
Yeah, I travel a lot.
Yeah.
So
what's your favorite travel destination?
Anywhere with like a beautiful sunrise and water. I've just come back. Last month I went to Hong Kong and then Borneo. Oh, stunning. I wrote so much while I was there, and then I came back. I haven't written anything since. So yeah.
You're living the life. You're living the dream.
I'm trying.
Great. Yeah, I've got a few quick fire questions, but before we get into those, I wanted us to talk a bit more around social media and the internet. I feel like the internet personally has done more, I don't know if the word to use is more good than harm, in my opinion. I feel that the internet in itself is not the bane, it's just the excessive or the addictiveness of it that is the issue. And some of these conversations, we probably won't be having them if we as humans manage to strike a healthy balance when it comes to the use of anything at all. There's the extreme or the excessive use of anything would only do so much good. So I was just wondering if your book isn't really like a manifesto to tell people to stay off social media, is it?
No, just keep the kids off, then they can. I think. Do you know what I think? The problem. People ask me, do you think that the internet has been net positive or net negative? At this point, I think it's negative. And that pains me to say it because I use it all the time.
Exactly. Without the internet, we wouldn't probably have a room full of people.
Like, right? It has fantastic. It's done. It continues to do fantastic things. But I also see, like, I cannot be on the internet as much as I am and not see the harm that it's causing. But I think it's not in isolation, right? It's human nature. It's capitalism. Whenever there's money to be made, nonsense follows very quickly. So I can't just say that the internet by itself is this terrible thing. It's not. It's a combination of factors that has made it what it is today. We are seeing social media platforms being bought in order to influence elections and things like that, and I'm just it's worrying. I do get concerned, and I try not to go into that thought spiral because I'll just become even more cynical than I am. But yeah, I think it's done amazing and it continues to do amazing. I'm not going to stop using it, but I would just encourage to keep kids off it as much as possible, especially when it comes to making money from them. Let them be kids, man. That's why. Yeah.
Totally agree. Questions?
Yeah. I know one of you wants to ask me about Findom. I know you do. I know you might not be brave enough to do it, but I know one of you wants to ask me about Findom. So you can.
I now want to know what you want to say
about Findom. Do you know what? I think so. People have asked me why I chose to make and already get into Findom.
Yeah.
And number one, we may not like it. Some people may not like it, but sex work is on the rise and has been for a long time. It's another, as the internet has boomed, it's another function of the internet. Girls don't need to, and women don't necessarily need to actually interact with clients anymore. They can make a lot of money just by being on the internet and interacting that way. So I wanted a way that Anuri can make money and keep her relatively safe. And this form of sex work, because that's what it is what I came up with. And I'm friends with sex workers, and I know quite a few financial dominatrix. dominatrices?
Okay, yeah.
Dominatrices. I don't know what the plural is. And most of them live a fantastic life, and the ones that don't actually have to interact with their pay pigs are having, as in they don't see them in person, they don't never meet them. They make a lot of money, and I don't understand the psychology behind the pay pig. I do want to find that out. I do want to do more research into that, but I needed a way for her to be able to be financially independent alongside her hair business.
Yeah.
And this was a way that was fun, a little bit out there to do it, and also dealt with some of the feelings that she had with her dad without being too sexual. So that's why I chose Findom specifically, but it could have been any kind of sex, really. So yeah, it was fantastic to research and write. It really was.
Wow.
It was. I interviewed a pay pig about this.
How did you find them?
They find me. No, I'm being so serious. All you need to write on Twitter is pay pig, and they will find you.
That's new
It's a cost of living crisis, guys. Do what you need to do. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Which kind of I find really fascinating, the amount of research that must have gone into this book in terms of like asking people some of the weirdest questions.
Yeah.
How do you get comfortable with that? How do you even get them to that point where they trust you enough or feel safe enough to want to speak to you about some of the questions that would eventually feed into?
Sometimes you don't even get the opportunity to speak to that many people. I spent a lot of my time, a lot of research came from going into the weirdest and the most depressing areas of Reddit. That's and yeah, literally, that's where the truth will, like, that's why I originally found that some of these child social media stars, that's where they feel free because they're anonymous to talk about the things that have happened. So I found them there. I found a few on TikTok, and a couple were, I mean, they have large followings, so I'm guessing some of them didn't see my messages. A couple did very graciously let me ask some questions. I did a lot of research on like the psychology of things, which you can just do. And I spoke to one psychiatrist and a couple of sociologists. I also, and obviously, if you want to, you offer to pay people for their time, you will get a lot more response. So the book I'm writing now, I've paid a couple of people for their time, and I paid a few people for their time for this as well. And I think that's fair. Like, you're asking someone to give up their time and their expertise to talk to you about something. The least you could do is at least offer them lunch. So
coffee. Nice. And if you don't mind us asking, what's the new book about?
There's two books I'm writing. One of them is about Igbo mythology. So I'm not sure if you know that romantasy and fantasy is very big right now. And I was like, do you know what? I haven't seen anything about, I'm Igbo, and obviously Igbo culture is very important to me. So I was like, Igbo mythology, I'd like to explore it. So I'm writing something a little bit about that, and then I'm writing something about revenge. Yeah, that's all I'll say for now.
Okay, juicy. Wow, I can't wait. And the Igbo mythology bit, is that going to fall, of course, under the fantasy fiction, the sci-fi?
I would probably call it more magical realism. I'm not going to write an 800-page book. I can't do it. I can't. I'm so sorry. I can't do it. And I really admire fantasy writers. The amount of work that goes into world building and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely insane. I admire them so much. I can't do it. So mine's going to be a lot shorter, and which is why it's based on Igbo mythology. So the deities and so on and so forth, they already exist in mythology. So it's going to be interesting.
All right, something to look forward to. And speaking about Igbo, kind of like reading here about how your book is a share show of the richness of the Igbo culture, the opulence, and having spent most of your life in England, I know you were born in Benin. How do you manage to stay in sync and in touch with the culture, so much so it's become something so important to you and you want to share with the world and your readers in general?
My parents is where I start. I love them so much, and we're so close, and they have made it a point to make sure that we have all been raised, even though we've been here, amongst a community. They've built a community where it's not just Igbo people, obviously, but they've made it clear that we must keep in touch with our heritage. So my dad sat us down and he taught it. Like my brother and sister they're older than me and they haven't really kept up with it as much as I have. But my dad really did sit us down and he was like, you will learn how to speak at least this amount of Igbo. And I just carried on. And they, you know, when it comes to like weddings and all those kind of beautiful customs that we have, they're very much like, no, you wear ichafu, you're not going to wear gele, you're going to wear ichafu. No, you're man. They've just been very clear, and I love them for it because it's just woven into who I am. So anything that I write, you will see it because I can't separate myself from it. So
beautiful. Just curious. I've always had this fear about, you know, raising as, I think I would call myself like a first generation in the UK, Yoruba, Nigerian and African. And there's this morbid fear of, you know, my language going into extinction and all of that. How do you hope to maybe pass on your love or your share excitement around the Igbo culture to potentially your nieces, your nephew, or your children?
Absolutely. Like I'm buying them books now. I'm buying them books on, you know, Igbo tales. You know, my precious, who you know, I've been talking about, she has written a wonderful children's book called There's Rice at Home, and it's translated into something like 80 languages, and Igbo is one of them. And I make sure that my niece and nephew, my godchildren, they have these things. And I'm like, I may not be, you know, I may have been raised here as well, but there's things that I know that I can pass on if they're interested, and even if they're not interested, you will still learn something from me. Like because it is painful to think about your language and your culture and your heritage dying out. So it's not something that I'd like to happen. So.
Great. Glad we share that in common. Sure.
I was really curious about the choice to leave. I'm assuming the Igbo phrases without any English translation. I quite enjoyed that, but I was just really curious about your decision on that.
So it wasn't my decision. So I'm very much like I was fighting for a glossary or footnotes because I'm like, even I know readers aren't stupid. They can pick up context clues and figure out what I'm saying in a different language. But if they would like to know the absolute, you know, perfect meaning, I'd still like to have a glossary in the back where they can flick to whenever they finished or whatever they want. But it's just not. Unless you're a specific kind of fiction writer, it's not done in fiction. So I had that argument a long time ago with my publishers and I lost. So but that's the reason.
And I enjoyed it, and like you said, you can get the context.
And there is some things that I just translate because it makes sense too in that context, but I couldn't do that for every single Igbo phrase because it would just be too obvious. And I don't, and I don't, like I said, I know that readers are smart, and it's a big contrast between the UK and the US because fortunately, like the US publishers, they do think that their readers are a bit stupid sometimes, and I think that's sad.
The only thing I would have loved is a kind of how to pronounce the names. Because I didn't know, I was trying to kind of make the name sounds in my head, but I didn't know if I was getting it right. Somehow that was important to me.
I made a TikTok video about that. So the pronunciation video is on my TikTok and it's also on my Instagram. So it's there because people did ask me. They were like, I want to know what the names sound like. So I made a video.
It's a good thing you actually talked about that because I'm Nigerian, but I'm not too sure I'm actually pronouncing the name of the protagonist correctly. I pronounce her Anuri.
Everybody pronounces
so can you like teach us how to?
I knew that was going to be the case when I chose the name, and I said I'm going to choose it anyway because Anuri is still a beautiful name, even if you pronounce it that way. It's actually pronounced Anuri, which I don't expect people to, and that's fine. But like people. Anuri, but it's Anuri.
So just imagine a hyphen between the N and the U.
It's like a very Igbo sound. It's because the N has an accent. And it's not an accent it's not a sound that exists in our English language. So it's just a bit weird. But it's Anuri. Yes, if it's something like this, it's but I have a video that tells you how to pronounce all the names.
All right.
So,
cool. Nice. Thank you for sharing. And I will be asking more questions, but just wondering if anyone wants to chime in, share some thoughts, comments. Or...
I did just think it was really good having the different generations' perspectives on the internet as well, especially just that little bit with Ophelia's dad, and is kind of talking about how his generation validate privacy and they just can't get their head around it, but to other generations that have sort of grown up with it, they wouldn't even think that there's anything strange about it. So I just liked that bit in the book.
Thank you. And yeah, privacy is a big thing for me. I don't know how other people feel. Please chime in. But for me, like I think I'm the bane of my publishers' lives sometimes, because they're just like they're like, you're just not out there enough, and I'm like, I'm just in the house writing. Like I'm really terrible at like promoting myself. Because I'm shy sometimes, and I'm not 100% sure people will care what I have to say. Myriad reasons, but other authors are fantastic about being out there and putting themselves out there, and like, you know, I also value my privacy a lot. So I'm not one that's looking for fame at all. Money's different, but fame,
of course.
Yeah.
So I can't.
Fame, I'm not interested in that. So I don't know how other people feel. Like, are you guys big proponents of privacy, or do you don't mind living your lives out there on the internet and in public eye?
I think I'm the same. Like, I'm very private. I kind of think I don't think I have anything that the world needs to specifically hear, and I'm very private, but most people are kind of the opposite. So it was good to
have Facebook with, but that's my friend.
Yeah.
Insta now.
Yeah.
But what I'm interested, my nieces who are now 14 and 12, my sister's been really strict about, since they were quite young, about what is okay to put on the internet. When they were small and cute, it was kind of, there was a few, school photos and things. But as they've got older, consent has been really important to me as well. So you can put cream on them when they got out of the bath. It's like, can I? Sort of educate them. And for years now, we generally haven't. So when I went to see one of them play football, I just took photos of the boots.
Yeah, it's things like that. Yeah.
Or if I do want to put anything up, I always show that picture to my sister, saying, "How do you feel about this?"
Yeah.
Just so that there isn't anything. They were playing in the pool. It was like, fine.
Literally.
No.
Absolutely. Even my sister-in-law now, she doesn't. Her Instagram is locked down. She has like 12 followers, but even still, she'll like post the photos with like a bar across the kids' faces, because she's like, I don't know who else you're showing this to. I think I've paranoid her a little bit with this, which is good. It's good. So,
Better safe than sorry.
Absolutely, and there is, apart from the consent piece, it's just scary people out there. Like reading that New York Times long form piece on these TikTok child stars and who their following is, it terrified me. Like, I think it was like 5,000 child star little girls on TikTok are being followed by 10 million men. And I'm like, that's enough to never to make me want to just nuke the entire internet. So like when I share things like that with my brother and my sister-in-law, they're like, absolutely not. No, we're not even going to post anything anymore. But I know that's the extreme, but it's not even that extreme anymore. 10 million, like, it's a bit.
Yeah, totally agree. I have a question.
I totally agree with you on the privacy bit. I don't think I've posted anything in my WhatsApp stories since I've used WhatsApp. I've not posted anything on IG in about 3 years plus. But the world is moving from that privacy space to making yourself become a brand. I asked someone, why does Onyi Nwabineli, for people who don't know, he's one of the richest Nigerians. He owns a bank and a few other businesses in Nigeria. Why does he have someone following him around with a camera? Why does someone like Deyemi Akola have someone following him around with a camera? Those things have now become
the norm,
a part of how you make money.
They
want to put a face to whatever it is you bring in, even if what the face is doing is stupid. Because sometimes some of the stuff they do, I'm like, why?
It's cringeworthy, right?
Absolutely.
But the more they put themselves out there, the more they get contact for the other things that bring value to them. I saw your name for the first time through Toby. But if you had and I'm not advocating that you do. I totally respect your privacy because I'm like that. Even though it's making people money, I don't think I'd ever be that person with the camera following me around.
Yeah.
But it probably would do a lot more promotion for the kind of work you do, and get more people to also buy into the tradition. Because what will be said about the fear of languages and culture going extinct is one fear I have.
Yeah.
And I am trying to enforce it that my children speak Yoruba in the house. We're trying to make that home lingo, and go outside and speak whatever you want, but in this house, this is what you speak.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm just saying, how do you feel about people that have now, or where the world is going, where it's your face now that people want to see, having a camera follow people pay. I think someone was telling me it's £100 per day or per hour to have someone following you around with the camera. I'm like,
that's my worst nightmare. I can't even lie.
Because it makes them, pardon my French, shitload of money. So beyond just BASK Book Club, I do a bit of PR on the site to help promote authors, and there are times I have to work with like influencers, for example, and there are quite a number of them that have maybe like, we call them like tier A influencers. I had to request for like a rate card of one of them about 2 weeks ago. She's got about 5 million followers on Instagram, for example. And the rate card was just to have her post a single flyer on an Insta story was going to cost, set me back by about 3,000 quid. And that's the price. Some of them pay for having a camera following them around because it's what puts food on the table for them. It's become the norm. But
there's so many downsides to make it, in my opinion, to making yourself your brand, and that is because you cannot separate the two after a while. And so any criticism about your brand is criticism about yourself as a person, and people do not take that well. I've seen it play out many times. And you know, my friends are so protective of my work, probably even more protective than I am. So you know, they're on Goodreads, and I'm like, please log off Goodreads. Do not fight with people on Goodreads.
It's a mess, really, out there.
for leaving a negative. People are allowed to dislike my books, and they're like, no, they're not. I'm like, yes, they are. Like, yes, they are. People are. I know when you become a writer, when you put a product out in the world, you have to have in your head that not everybody is going to like it. Some people will despise it, and that is okay. That's their prerogative. And so, you know, people ask me, they're like, do you look at your reviews? And I'm like, I don't look at any reviews. I don't, not even good ones. I don't seek them out. My publicist will send me a review, like somewhere in the Financial Times or something, and I'll be like, oh, that's nice. But anything like I don't seek out. I don't read them at all because, and do you know what's interesting? People will tag you on social media in their reviews, positive or negative. And I'm like, I don't know why you tag me in a negative review. What do you want me to say? Are you hoping I'll respond? I say thank you as much as I can when I see the positive ones by accident, but I never respond to negative reviews. I'm like, that's your opinion, and you're more than welcome to your opinion. I don't want to turn myself into a brand. I understand that it might do fantastic things for, you know, sales and money and so on, but at what personal cost to me? Will I be mentally and physically and emotionally exhausted? Will I start seeing a splintering of self in terms of this is my book and this is my work, but is it like me? It's too much for me, and maybe I'll change my mind in the future. And as I said, I post very periodically on TikTok. I have 3 videos, and that's after I've been kind of forced to put them there. But I really do respect the authors that are out there and making content and so on, and you can see it reflected in their sales and so on. But I think I'm doing okay with just hiding. That's all right.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, my quick fire questions, and it's just going to be short and sweet. The essence of this basically is to help us get to know you better beyond just the book. So I'm just curious, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning.
Okay.
I wake up at between 5:30 and 6:15 every day. Wow. I go to the gym. That's why.
Interesting. Okay. Your favorite book character?
Out of my books? Or in this?
No, not in this one. You told us about Simi already.
Yeah.
Or is there any other?
Oh, Norma's also my second favorite character, and then someday maybe my favorite character is Nate, and then Louisa.
Okay, nice,
Yeah.
lovely to know. What's your most productive writing tool?
OneNote on my laptop. That's where I plan and plot and outline everything chapter by chapter. That's how my process.
Okay. So you would say you're one of those authors that kind of like have like a writing map before you commence the writing process.
Yeah,
itself.
like I'm also one of those people that inspiration will strike when I'm like on the toilet or in the shower, and then I will have to keep it in my head and put it in my notes app on my iPhone.
Like a voice note or what?
Any and then I will transfer it to my OneNote because if I do not note it down immediately, I will not remember it. I have to have that.
It's quite useful you mentioned OneNote because I mean it's very interesting because you need OneNote to automatically saves on the drive and you do not want to lose your manuscripts by any chance.
I write in Word, but like everything all of my planning is done in OneNote and it's fantastic. I've used that for both books. So.
Lovely to hear. Introvert or extrovert?
Oh, introvert.
Of course. Saw that coming. Who is your favorite musician?
Of all time?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's a tough one, right?
Come back to that one.
Okay. Okay, so who are you enjoying listening to lately? Let's just keep it simple.
Kendrick Lamar.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, his song Euphoria, I'm going to quote him in my revenge book. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go to more serious question now before we go back to the quick fire ones. I've got one here about how Hanuri and Noella didn't quite deserve the portion they were served with because I mean they were kids and they had their whole life on the internet and all of that. I feel they are two complex characters I believe were not easy to bring to life. I mean, for Anuri, you probably had to juggle in between writing from a perspective as a child and then as an adult or 20-something-year-old. So what tactic really helped you to navigate that writing process and make sure that you weren't missing out on some very vital details?
So it's fantastic. So because in my OneNote planning, I have character profiles that I plot out before I start writing proper. And for the protagonists, they are long. So they are very long. It has things like, not just things like physical traits, etc., but like how would they react in this situation and how would they react in that situation. So it makes it easier for me when I know, and I kind of absorb that information. So when I'm writing Ari, it's like, I know that she's acting out of character because she would not do that based on this creation I've made in my mind. And I always go back to it because if I want to make them act out of character, I know exactly what it is that I need to do because I have this reference. So that's how I do it for Ari. Noelle's a kid, right? She's 5. So it's a little bit, it's easier and a little bit more difficult because I can't remember all that much from when I was 5-year-old. But I can understand what it would feel like as an adult right now and understanding, especially with some of the research I did around the psychology of stuff. You know, these kids that are in the limelight and the spotlight, they have different things to bear. So impulse control is really difficult for them sometimes. They have this weird push and pull relationship with their parent because their parent is now their employer. They are rewarded for certain things that, you know, if you do this and you're on camera for 20 minutes, I'll buy you this or I'll do this. It's just and that can be confusing for kids. So I needed to make Noelle realistic in that she was all over the place. She's just a baby and she doesn't know exactly, she loves her parents, but that love comes, you know, with conditions almost. So yeah.
Interesting. How long did it take you to write Allow Me to Introduce Myself?
Someday maybe 6 years. Allow Me to Introduce Myself 6 months. Wow. Steep learning curve. Yes.
Tell me
about
and
deadlines. And deadlines.
Whoa. Didn't see that coming. So a few quick fire questions. Your favorite food
of all time? Jollof rice.
Nigerian jollof or Ghanaian jollof?
my mother's jollof.
Okay, of course that's Nigerian jollof. Okay. What does success look like to you?
Exactly what I have now.
Wow.
I was with my friends yesterday, and they were asking me how I feel about life, and I was like, I'm living exactly the life that I wanted to live. So I don't. They're like, don't you want this and don't you want that? Don't you want to win the Booker Prize? I'm like, it would be fantastic, but like if I don't feel like I've lost out on anything. This is success for me. I get to travel the world when I want. I get to write beautiful stories that people will read, and I'm surrounded by people that I love and love me back. So
yeah, lovely sense of contentment.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And you talked a lot about therapy in your book, and Henry had a few therapy sessions and all of that. What does therapy look like to you?
I have a therapist, and I have for many years. I think everyone can benefit from therapy, and I think it's really sad that it's so inaccessible to most people.
Yeah.
But for me, therapy is not somebody sitting down and telling you what to do or handle a particular situation. They're giving you the tools to navigate different situations in life. So that's a good therapist for me. And I sat down with, I think, 3 or 4 therapists before I found mine. You have to have a good fit, not somebody that's going to coddle you, not somebody that's going to misunderstand you in terms of your culture and so on and so forth. It might take a little while to get there, but therapy is somebody giving you the tools to navigate life or certain situations in life in a healthy way.
Fantastic. Yeah. And then last 2 questions before I ask the audience. Who is your biggest influence as a writer? Are there like writer authors or writers that kind of like shaped your style writing over the years? Might be much more than
not
just
really
one.
shaped, but I do love African writers. Obviously Achebe is
legendary.
You know, Shoyinka, obviously.
Shoyinka, yeah.
You have.
Do you read with Shoyinka as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Struggle with it.
And then, but some of the more, the newer contemporary writers, Akweke, Emezi, we have fantastic really young Nigerian and African writers coming out all the time. I'm just finishing. Oh, what's her name now? She's outstanding. I'm reading her debut novel, Vagabonds.
Okay.
Hello. Yes.
Osunde.
Yes. Outstanding. And that book is it's amazing. And so it's writers like these that it's not even that they shape me, but they inspire me. Like I'm like, I don't think that I have to be the best at everything, but when I read their work, I'm like, oh, you need to get on your game, girl. Like you need to there's still improvements to make. Yeah, absolutely. But so I don't have a favorite writer of all time, but there's so many different books. I have a short list of books that have been integral in I will never forget them, and I will always reread them. So yeah.
Great. I was gonna ask what you're reading currently, but I think you already mentioned Vagabond. Is there any other title that you would recommend?
There's quite a few actually. Now I don't know if you guys have read. Have you guys read The Ministry of Time? It's been topping the bestseller list for a while, and that has to do with it's like a time travel type, romance type, magical realism spy thriller. Again, it's on my next list to read, and also Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. That's on my one. That's quite high at the top as well. Yeah. So those are the ones I'm going to read now, but because for the past 4 books I've just read African authors, I should diversify.
Oh yeah,
diversify. Yes.
Totally. Any more questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Comments towards. Go for it.
So I'm not quite familiar
Hello.
with your work, but I'm really happy to hearing what goes through the process. And for me, based on what I've heard so far, it reads like a bit of a story. And I wanted to comment on that. A lot of times we hear people complain about how we need more joyful stories. A lot of our novels, are centered around patriarchal systems or just the very not so great aspects of culture. Do you think there's something in the works that could provide a bit of support for us?
There's so much out there. This is the thing. People, yes, we do complain a lot about our stories are so traumatic, but there's so many books by Black and African authors that aren't that as well. Even my books are sad. but they're also really, really funny, and there's a lot of joy in them as well. People can choose what they want to like concentrate on, but there are so many books out there like that are hilarious and have nothing to do with trauma. But at the same time, I'm never going to tell an author that they shouldn't write something traumatic, because if that's where their head's at and that's what's in their spirit to write, they need to get it out, and they can write it. But at the same time, there's just such a breadth. It's the same thing with our films, right? There's so many smaller independent films and media out there that showcase Black joy, but we concentrate on the slavery ones. And then the slavery ones are important stories to tell, right? And that's, I guess, what a wider audience wants to see, because they're the ones that sell the most. But the others exist, we just don't champion them enough. So other things do exist, and I can give you a list of authors and a list of books written by Black and African authors that do center joy. And yes, I will write stuff that's happier in the future. I also will also write things that are extremely sad in the future as well. I'm a multifaceted being. So yes.
What exploring every shade and form of yourself. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And you've been writing for as long as you. So at what point, what is defining? It doesn't have to be a defining moment. At what point did you decide that you wanted to have one cohesive work?
The thing is, I was bullied. My family and my friends were like, "What?" It was during the pandemic, during lockdown, and they were like, "This is ridiculous. Like I've written about 6 novels, and 4 of those will never see the light of day, and that's fine. I'm okay with that because they're terrible." But my parents and my friends, they were like, "Listen, you've been working on this piece for a long time, and I know that you're scared because it's a gift for your friend, and I know it's this and that. But now is the time. Like you need to pull your finger out, and you need to contact some agents. And if they say no, that's the worst thing that can happen, is that they say no. But you've done 8 drafts of this book, like." Again, pardon my French, but shit, I'll get off the pot kind of thing. So I was like, do you know what? You're actually right. So that's what I did. I said, okay, if not now, well, I couldn't think of a reason not to put it out in the world anymore. So I was very fortunate, because it's not the case for a lot of authors. I made a short list of 5 agents, and the second name on that list, she signed me within 24 hours. So the timing was right. So yeah, and I know there can be a mind block to be like, no, I have to keep making this better and better and better. But I tell aspiring writers all the time, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to exist. So just write it and put it out there. So yeah.
Is there something in the title and the timings of writing? Someday, maybe 6 years.
Yeah, maybe. You know what? Someday Maybe wasn't always called Someday Maybe. That's another thing you should know, aspiring writers. Your publishers have veto rights on your title. So yeah, be prepared. Don't get too attached. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the forewarning. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Onyi.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
A huge round of applause for you.
Thank you so much.
I had an incredible time. Not sure about you, but I can kind of like feel the pulse of the audience, and I must say everyone must have enjoyed listening to you.
Audience. And please do come and find me and chat to me afterwards. I won't rush away. And if you do have more questions about Findom, just come and find me.
Okay. Yeah. More of that. Onyi is going to be staying to like sign a few copies of our book. We've got allow me to introduce myself, available for £11, and I think there's just 1 copy of Someday Maybe, so whoever is lucky to cook that. And a huge thank you for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. It means so much. I hope it's been enjoyable. I hope you'll join us in November. Hopefully that will be our last session for the year 2024. And yeah, yes, there is. I think it's by Jendela Benson. I can't remember the title now, which is quite bizarre. But it's on the Guildford Library, and what's the name? Yeah. So it's up on the Guildford Library Instagram page, and you can just check here. It's great. Oh, can't wait to delve in. Actually,
you'll enjoy it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you guys.